Is the Tory prescription for the nation's economic health another dose of austerity medicine?
Because I've got my speech tomorrow. I don't take my blood pressure today. That would be, I think, probably off the chart.
That's the question David Cameron faced on the morning after the promise before. A promise that in future government will spend less than it taxes. A promise which friend and foe alike have seen as likely to lead to another dose of cuts. The Prime Minister insists, though, that his and George Osborne's plan is not ideological, it's common sense.
That if you've had overdraft after overdraft, year after year, it does matter that in the good years you start putting some money aside for potentially rainy days that might lie a long way ahead.
Can we be clear what that means? 7 more years of cuts to certain government departments?
No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. If the economy continues to grow and if tax revenues increase and if unemployment falls, there would be money to spend on other departments.
No previous Chancellor, no previous Conservative Prime Minister has promised a budget surplus year in, year out, and the reason is it can mean cuts in public spending.
It's early days, but it could mean a real terms freeze in public spending, so not a cut but a freeze, and obviously you then have to make the decisions about what you do with each department. But we've demonstrated in government that you can make reductions but improve services.
The other big economic announcement here in Manchester was about housing, the earlier than expected launch of the government's controversial scheme to help people who are struggling to raise the funds for a deposit to buy their home.
The government is now subsidising someone who can afford to buy a £600,000 house while cutting benefits from people who barely can afford enough to make ends meet.
Well, I don't accept that for a minute. What we're doing with our Help to Buy policy is it's not a subsidy to people, it is a mortgage guarantee, and a mortgage guarantee
is an interest-free loan of £120,000. I could take you in streets within minutes of here. You could buy an entire house for £120,000.
But the fact is, people can't buy an entire house in the streets around here because you can't get a 95% mortgage anymore. You can't get a 90% mortgage. So there are young people in our country, couples in our country who have good jobs, decent incomes. They could afford the mortgage payments, but they can't buy the house. It's a failure in our banking market, a failure in our banks.
There is one other new policy here, and it centres on this man.
All will be revealed in the speech.
Boris Johnson, the Tory who reaches the parts other politicians simply cannot reach, charmed his party with another jokey hint at the extent of his political ambition.
Not so long ago, I welcomed the former French Prime Minister, Monsieur Alain Juppé, to my office in City Hall, and he told me that he was now the mayor of Bordeaux. I think he may be mayor of Bordeaux when he was Prime Minister. It's the kind of thing they do in France. Very good idea, in my view.
This came after David Cameron made it clear that he wanted the Mayor of London back as a Tory MP.
Oh yeah, no, I think he's got a huge contribution to make. Whenever Boris wants to, he'll get a warm welcome from me.
What's that old saying about keeping your enemies close?
All right. Would you like to see Boris back for the next election?
I love Boris.
Boris Johnson has yet to decide whether to return that love and take up David Cameron's offer. Perhaps he's waiting to see whether the Prime Minister's big speech tomorrow makes him look like a winner. Nick Robinson, BBC News, Manchester.